Hello everyone, this is Fantastic Worlds, welcoming you back to Lovecraft Country and Control, Lore, and Chill. And yes, this time around we're doing the Hiss and the Void. Now, a quick note to people following me on the regular series. This series has been dealing with the overlap of the Control universe and concepts known to Gnostic and pre-Kabbalistic beliefs of mysticism. So if you're not familiar with those two systems, I'm going to put a link up there to the right where you can start at the beginning and I break it all down. But to those of us who've been following so far, let's go into what the void is first. And the reason I'm starting on the beginning screen here is that you are staring into it. Yeah. The void is the concept of what the universe is that is not creation. In other words, it is the literal canvas, the infinite sea of creation in which all things occur. Now, as I said in episode 1, what gives it form and makes it our creation is the light of the Most High, or the glory, or the sea, or Yahweh if you're in that particular one. But in any case, it is God, as you like to put it. In other words, that is the thing that gives it, and that's where the concept of let there be light comes from, because he is literally breathing, radiating, focusing, singing, whatever your belief structure is, the vibrational structure in the universe onto the void. But let's ask ourselves something. What happens when he stops doing that? Okay, and with that, we'll slip into the next part. Hang on. Okay, so welcome back to the world of form. How we pass out of the void into the structure we know as creation. Yes, here we are. This is, of course, the demiurge, as we discussed before, which is kind of the barrier.
I heard that he voluntarily.
I'm sorry, hang on.
That's what Pope said anyway.
She doesn't know what she's talking about. His aren't that self-aware.
Never close your mind to possibilities. Anyway, so yes, the material world, this we're in the demiurge, which is actually the boundary between the rest of creation and the portion that has in fact been captured by the entities known as the Watchers. Like again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you'll have to see the earlier videos on Gnosticism connections. But in this particular case, you'll mind me make this a little quieter. I love this gun. Anyways, that's much better. Damn. Sorry, dude. Anyways. Ooh, yeah, I forgot to fly that one out. In any case, what we're dealing with here in the material world is, of course, form. And form is created from the void by the divine, and the correct term for this, by the way, would be the logos, the word. In which case it is it imposes structure upon the void. Now, what happens if the logos fails? And the reason I'm bringing this up is that according to Gnosticism and Kabbalism, this is not the first universe. Uh-oh, I might get jumped in here. Let's go back to the cafeteria. This is not the first universe. This is a draft, and there have been earlier drafts, and occasionally God gets upset with the structure of the universe not quite meeting, well, his design standards, and decides that it's time to fold the whole thing over and start over again. We call these apocalypses. Yes, that is a term for the multiple of apocalypse. So in these cases, what happens is that, the world folds in together, all the souls are, gathered for judgment, and, everything moves on. Except sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, actually, I've forgotten about this part, but since we've got that magic pill now, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. God, stuff looks like it's rank. Oh, that guy's gonna come back as a fungal person. Lock this one down, guys. Anyways. Oh, what are they having for lunch anyways? Oh, I can't read it. Anyways. So, in that case, what happens is, of course, everything falls into the void, is canceled out, the souls are returned back to the primal source, and everything is back. Except some people may object to this. And this may sound a little weird, but some individuals... Keep it down, guys. Some individuals may consider it to be a bad thing to be destroyed and reborn into a new version of creation and try to retain their own that. Now, we've already seen one of these before that wasn't the hiss, and that's the fungal creatures, not the fungus that comes in through the open threshold that makes the moss people, but the one that the janitor calls his arch enemy. If we get jumped in here, I'll skip to the non-jump part. There we go. Well, that was a thing that happened. Yes, as you can see, it was a bit of a mess. Anyways, yes, so we've seen the mold. In other words, the original one that's clogging up all the sewage system and nobody can get rid of because it's literally a thing that's adapted to surviving to the void. Now, of course, we're going with the assumption that the janitor is... Not Arish, it's not the janitor. What am I thinking? The janitor, his name escapes me at the moment, god damn it. The janitor is God, so therefore God considers the mold to be the enemy, and why that would seem a little silly to begin with, there is an actual reason for it. Mold is one of the oldest and most adaptable organisms, and therefore was one of the earliest that evolved in this world, which basically means that if we're assuming that God is creating universes as he creates and destroys all things, according to Kabbalistic lore, that God is in fact creating universes of simple life first. And other things like mold and, you know, worms and maybe those little spiral shells or whatever comes first, and then he starts layering on top of it. That means, by the way, that it's quite probable that the humanity is relatively recent. It might be the actual first incarnation of the human race within a Gnostic system. We are a rough draft for the people who will come after us. Well, hopefully we're quite better at whatever it is we were supposed to be doing. Yeah, God's lovely voice. Okay, so in this particular system, what happens to the simple life forms that when they're plunged into the void? Of course, 99.99% of them are going to end up, you know, dead. They're essentially destroyed, their souls returned back to the primal source, and next thing you know, they're being reborn into a totally new world in a new incarnation that's probably slightly different. And then there's a new, more complex layer of life layered on top of that, which means we still have 0.1% that can survive the void. Now, something as simple as the mold that we see in the basement could exist because it doesn't require a complicated set of circumstances to maintain its consciousness. It doesn't have a consciousness. It just kind of reacts. To things around it, which means that they end up, of course, just eating, consuming, and spreading and continue to go further. And this is a problem because if such a thing exists in the void and it can find itself back into our world, which has a much more, how do I put this? When you take one species that's accustomed to a very hostile environment, you place them in another system which has a very hostile environment, a not so hostile environment, they will explode, especially if they don't have anything resembling a natural predator. For example, take the rabbits in Australia, which once they were introduced, quickly took over because the natural predators of rabbits, like coyotes, foxes, and wolves, did not exist in Australia. So they multiplied until they managed to push out actual native species, and thus they still have a problem over a century later. So that's where we are at this moment when it involves rabbits in Australia. So do we take... get this out of my way. Yes, getting bourgeoisie about the damn telekinesis. And anyway, so what happens is that the mold is designed to survive within the void. This area we're in right now is the demiurge, which, of course, is not the void, or at least it borders the void, and it is a lot less hard on the organisms within it, even though it's not technically one of the proved, as we would say, versions of creation that God created. Remember, this area is under occupation by the Watchers, so until that occupation ends, we're kind of not as nice as whatever the rest of the world would even, the universe would even look like. So, problem with this, of course, is that the mold then begins to spread like crazy. Now, this, of course, affects both the mold that the janitor referred to and the mold that's in the basement. In fact, I'll continue over into that section with that mold when we get there. Hang on. Okay, so here we are at the mold infected level. Now, the first mold we spoke about was a composite being that existed to consume, is the best way of putting it. Good God, this is creepy. And has no other purpose. But what it is here is actually constructed. Now, remember what the good doctor said down here, the one that kind of treats us like a minion, as it were. She said that all of this is not actually a type of mold. What it is a form of mold-like... Let's see, go through here. Oh, we found something. I didn't realize this was here. Oh, well. One of the reasons I do this, why I'm running, is I'm actually still also looking for anything I might have missed. And, you know, here we are. This is actually micro machines. These are actually mold-like micro machines that were designed to terraform a space in anticipation for a new form of life, is my guess. So what happens, of course, is that these things come in, they find a weak dimensional membrane, and then they penetrate through. Oh, come on. Okay, you two? Anyone else? Alright, just checking. Anything up here? Probably not. But, you know? Ooh, corrupted sample is rare. Anyways, yeah, so back to here. It's amazing they managed to stack it up like this. Probably should have gone to a better version of the sublevel, but this heavily infected area does give you an idea of what's going on. So this is an actual active terraforming project in which the unknown entities are using a form of micromachine, that mold-like micromachine that is reconstructing reality. Not just, mind you, making this place infected, but literally rewriting the very structure of reality within it, as well as trying to remake all organisms within it to be subservient to the mold itself. For all we know, the mold is the intelligence. After all, we fought a giant aggregate version of it. So that could be kind of like, if you guys are Halo fans, you'll remember the blessed Gravemind. Yes, the Gravemind, which is a species which colonizes other organic tissue and area and terraforms a section and does it, which means that this entire section could be sentient, as it were. We could be looking at... Is anything up here? No. We could be looking at this being a sum total intelligence stored within these fibers. And I gotta get the bulb replaced. Stored within these fibers in order to create a consciousness of some sort. The entire thing could be a consciousness, and when it infects other people... Excuse me. Oh, okay, I'm leaving. That was... Ooh. Better watch that. Did I hear it? Bye-bye? Alright. What the heck was that? Anyways, what the heck is this? Just another recording. So I guess... be careful about this. As you can see, not only are these things dangerous to us health-wise, they spread the spores, and this is a standard tactic when comes spores. So it's entirely possible that someone took the mold systems that they found in the void, the ones that the god has been fighting with in the plumbing for some time. Ooh, I can't make myself up there. Oh well, we'll get to the rest of it in a moment. For some time, and decided that if this was strong enough to survive the void, then if we place our consciousness into it while God is collapsing the universe in this apocalypse, because they may not even know that's what God's doing. Hang on. Well, that happened. Oh. See, it's also entirely possible, by the way, that these guys are being respawned by the moss itself. In other words, just like the hiss, these guys are being quote-unquote remembered and reconstructed. In other words, it takes the biomass, it absorbs it, it adds it to itself, and then it becomes greater as a result. Should remember how to get out of here at some point. Then, of course, we deal with the fact that if we don't do something about this in some point in time, the entire Bureau, aka the Demiurge, is going to be overrun with this. Now, why is this happening? Now, let's just make the assumption that this is created as a form of survival after the apocalypse. In other words, they decided that this, being a construct that can survive the void inside of micromachines to attempt to reconstruct their consciousness, is a way for them to survive the collapse of the universe and exist without... Oh, here we are. These things regrow quickly. Yes, that's how they spread, by the way. Not just... hang on, I'll catch you on the next side. Okay, so here we are, someplace a little more secure. The base camp is their attempt to explore in here, which of course was completely doomed since the entire area is designed to take control of whatever section it's in. But yeah, you can see, just like the hiss, where we reconstruct the structure of the Bureau to fit their purposes, aka the Demiurge, so is the mold. And it's really insidious is that because of the hiss infection right now, the board isn't even paying attention to this, and considering the board is probably the consciousness of the Demiurge stored within it, like an inherent computer program, that within a mainframe, that's bad for them. They'll eventually begin to devolve. And of course, this will try to move on into the Earth's material plane, and we probably don't want that. So yeah, this is probably a bad thing. But let's assume this is a terraform project. They basically took the original mold sample that was created from an earlier version of reality, when God was playing with slime molds, spores, and worms, and before he moved on to more advanced things, because you need proof of concept after all. No, we're not doing that. So yeah, that makes this a little dangerous, as this entire purpose is to, from a life form that existed from a previous state of being, wants to reconstruct itself in our reality by turning it back into that more primitive reality. In other words, the Terraform project will recreate the entire, well, let's call this primordial world within the demiurge and then infect the physical world, slowly turning everything into a giant mossland filled with nothing more than giant spawned creatures which do nothing more than to continue to try to spread the flow. In other words, it's a kind of zombie apocalypse, but for reality, just not for people. So what does it have to do with Hiss? Well, I think that was an early proof of concept. I think that the Hiss are a more improved version of it. You see, the Hiss, as we've proven before, especially when interacting with Jesse's brother Dylan, is a hive mind. Now, a hive mind is when multiple consciousnesses connect together like a networked computers. You end up with the... You okay, dude? You're not looking good. Just check yourself for infection later. Oh, hi. Oh, God. Just give me a second. I just need to be somewhere that's not filled with mold. You'll notice, by the way, she has some problems with mold here herself. How long you got before you're infected there? Yeah, I'm wondering if the more longer you're going to gain, the worse this infection gets. Yeah, look. The infection has already gotten decontamination showers. This place is fucked. I'm a director.
From beyond the mold. It's alive.
Oh, God, you're both doing it now. See, they think so, too.
Almost certainly.
See, they think so too. It's an intelligence, but it may not be improved. It may not be a great one. Now, the Hiss, of course, like I said, is a hive mind. All these networked minds act like a supercomputer in order to generate, well, how best to put this? The hive is a living energy field. Rather than trying to store themselves inside of mold particles, get out of here. Instead of trying to store themselves inside mold particles, they store themselves as a form of vibrational wave. Remember, vibrational waves are what previously is what determines the nature of the reality within the void. So this is basically, the Moss itself is the first attempt to hijack the control of the void from God. In other words, to say that we're going to remake the world in our image, not God's image, and we liked it back the previous way. Speaking of... Hi. Okay, that was fun. Anyways, yes, but the hive itself is a living vibration. In other words, rather than trying to convert their consciousness into mold, which is what a previous advanced species... Now, you can remember, at the end of time, at the end of a particular age of creation, let's call it, in which God decides to collapse it all because it's not working and he wants to try something a little more advanced, you know, fix the bugs they have in the code, then what happens is that they collapse everything, and then some survivors desperately hold on. In fact, the idea of a Lovecraftian horror being from a previous and more primitive age of time that survived into the present day is in fact pretty common when it comes to a Lovecraftian. Excuse me. Hang on. Comes to Lovecraftian nod. I mean, the At the Mountains of Madness was in fact entirely predicated on that. Didn't quite get it. Anyways, let's try it again. Alright, that's cool. I think we can get in now. I kind of like checking these places every now and then. We're not high enough yet, though. Oh, unfortunate. Never mind. We'll get these over here. But yeah. So yeah, the idea being is that the Hiss is an involvement beyond that point. Instead of trying to place her consciousness in a version of the mold which left over from previous age of creations, yet somehow still exists stubbornly within the void. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Okay, that was brief. Sometimes I wonder why they only try to attack me with 3 people at a time. In any case, so yeah, those right there basically recovered about an energy to materialize 3 humanoid forms and then use them to attack Jesse, because the hive isn't fully intelligent. It literally has the processing power of all the minds in it, but no directive until Dylan was added, because his is strong enough to be able to bend all the others to his will. And the hive, just like the mold, the construct, has one purpose. It wants to survive. It wants to propagate itself. It wants to remake creation into the earlier form that it preferred, the one that it came from. In other words, to remake the world into a cloud of thought forms hovering in the void, creating constructs as necessary for material purposes, and then ruling in the place of God. But the thing is, of course, normally it would not be able to do this in the material world, or the universe as it is, because God would forbid it. He would push them out into the void. The problem is, God is not in full control of this version. Remember, the Demiurge is a section that has been partially taken away from God's control by the Watchers, by his rogue Aeons. These Aeons cannot make a world as strong, powerful, or adaptable as their creator, because they are less than them. It doesn't matter how many times they try to stick their heads together and do it. There's also the fact that they're probably degenerating the further they are from God's light. I know they're calling him God. I usually have been calling him Most High or something like that, but we're going with the G word because most people know that one. But so what happens is that since these are weaker, if there's a breach in the Demiurge, or as I've noted before, the Demiurge has open portals, aka active thresholds to other portions of creation, then what happens is that they can then be infected. First by the mold downstairs, which has been a very slow but insidious form of capture. And then, of course, oh, for crying out loud. Okay, so yes, as you can see by the way I tried to capture that one there, when the hiss dissolved, it is evolved back into a random energy that just absorbed back into the hive. Hiss, I'm sorry, I said hive mind too much. It's absorbed back into the hiss in which it came from, and eventually when energy recycles and becomes strong enough, it will be brought back again to attack me. Yeah, this will be a continuous process until Jesse cuts off the source of the hiss, which we've already, by this point in the main game, determined is a dimensional breach known as a slide projector. A slide projector being an open portal, basically the slide itself into another section of reality, and possibly even one of the older realities. We don't know if it's not just creatures dwelling in the void. It could be that the hiss, because it has vibrational control, be able to create reality outside of creation, is capable of creating its own mini creation, basically like a really weaker and probably less interesting version of the demiurges right here that we're in right now. So that could be when Jessie and her siblings went into the portal, they were accessing areas of the void that has small little pocket universes in them. Now the reason that's important is that when the portal collapses, what happens is the creatures from that reality no longer can function in ours, which basically means that when the portal is open, the rules for the reality that are in that portal can influence ours. But when it's severed, in our reality, in the Demiurge Watcher created reality, they can no longer exist. So they are either disintegrated or they snap back to where they were. Now, the hiss infection is, of course, an ongoing thing in here, and it will continue to do so until we finish the main game, at the very least, and will remain a problem. But but we were going to exist in this sort of Schrodinger's cat state, where one particular dimension is overlapping with others. And like I said, now the thing is, this doesn't happen in normal reality, because I'm guessing that God is got a very strong membrane against this sort of thing. He doesn't want his past experiments to bother him why he's doing what he's doing here, which, of course, being God works in mysterious ways and likes finished tango, we don't know what they are. So, yeah, I mean, the primary thing we have to consider is that God wants all of his pieces of his reality back. He'd like to, disgruntled employees that stole this reality, he'd like it back. He'd probably like us to kill all of the hiss and remove all the other previous mistakes he had made in creating the universe before this one, because eventually, of course, God will get tired of this one or will perform a fatal flaw and have to collapse everything, which, if you think about it, by the way, means that he's being merciful to our world by not just blowing the whole thing up. Probably in a kind of a way, the Watchers are holding our world hostage. Avoid modern technology. Puts an arrow on your head. Okay, fine. But yeah, our universe is messed up, but it's not as messed up as the Hisses universe or the mold construct universe or the mold itself, which attempts to, take over our realities. Just checking to see if this one's done. All of these things were more primitive, less interesting, less evolved versions of creation. The earlier shells, as they're called in Kabbalism. Now, the thing is, creatures from those shells, by the way, within the canon Kabbalism, are called demons. They are basically creatures that, first of all, are dangerous to our reality, but if the Kabbalist wishes to do so, just knocking the toilet paper around, they can summon them and attempt to bargain with them for power or knowledge. Because, of course, in this particular theory, these beings are extraordinarily advanced scientifically in their way. Remember, everything here is science fiction, not straight up magic, although we've hit the point where we kind of are just treading line where science has gotten so advanced it might as well be magic. I mean, this is a shape-shifting gun that responds to her thoughts. It's probably a very highly advanced technology based on the seraphic version of swords. You know, you see them wielding swords is probably just because, you know, they think it's cool. But the thing is that angels probably have the ability to H-bomb cities on their own, as reported by the Bible. Anyways, back in a moment. As I was saying, the concept being is that he would like all of his creation back. God would. I mean, the thing is, if you threw kind of like this background, because this kind of shows Jesse as an angel, which is foreshadowing for future episodes, by the way. Yes, the idea that God would like his creation back. He would like the souls of the people who just tried to escape him back. He'd like to just clean out the void once and for all, but he's also completely distracted by this whole, you know, angel rebellion that created the demiurge and thus our crippled world. So he's got problems. Not to mention that if God is the sole consciousness of all beings, that the renegade ones are probably distracting him. I mean, theoretically, we're talking about the divine logos fighting itself. That is literally what's happening, that we are manifestations of that concept. And the hiss itself is one solution, an attempt, well, basically a solution looking for a problem. Hey, why have God when we can just become a hive mind of people mindlessly repeating the same phrases over and over again? Those phrases, by the way, are memetic triggers in an attempt to infect others. This is known as a memetic virus. In other words, a virus that if experienced follows your consciousness, absorbs it, and the next thing you know, you're part of it. You're part of the hive mind. Well, you can consider it a good thing or a bad thing, depending on your preferences. Some people would like to be immortal and part of a shape-shifting cloud.
What? No. Why?
I want to see where Blackrock prisms lie on the Mohs scale of hardness.
The Mohs scale of hardness, by the way, is a literary device, not a scientific one, in which says how realistic is this science. It's not very realistic. I mean, we're talking, all these concepts are in fact based on scientific principles, you know, like I'm discussing using physics, biology, and theoretical computing. Well, not theoretical. Network computing is a thing, but on the other hand, network computing for minds has yet to be achieved, no matter what Elon Musk thinks he's doing. Yes, I pick on Mr. Musk. Let's check out another level. Okay, so back to maintenance. My favorite part. God likes this part too. In any case, the idea being, of course, oh, this is the secret spot we found before. The idea being, of course, is that do you want to survive in, well, violation of the God's will? In this particular case, these beings we're talking about, the ones that created the hiss, the ones that turned themselves into living mold, thought that it would be a good idea to avoid getting out of the divine plan, to get out of the divine plan and make up their own idea of what's going on. Now, this is technically what the Watchers are doing too. If you think about it, they decided that no, God doesn't have it right together. We're going to do it our way. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to make a world that has no magic except what we determine it is. Now, the hiss, of course, is a competing faction. So technically, this is a bad guy civil war. If you're checking off the tropes in the TV tropes page, enemy civil war is technically the page. So we have the hiss itself. Now, remember, the hiss and the mold don't think. Even the Watchers show limited cognition despite their advanced abilities. They all have these advanced abilities, but they're moving on an instinctive level. The hiss and the mold just try to grow. That's it. They just grow. Okay, may have to get attacked in here. And they consume, and they get larger, and they want to make themselves more powerful. Basically, they're trying to become an alternative god. They'll never succeed because you cannot transcend yourself, and if you are part of something, in this case, the divine logos itself, you cannot exceed the whole of it. You can't become God by trying to take a piece of God. I mean, this was why our world kind of sucks, because it has limited logos, and it does not have the full, shall we say, features of whatever reality really is like. God damn it, I want some of these generic Cheetos. I like the fact they have a first aid kit over there. It's like anything would happen in this place, I don't think a couple of band-aids is going to cover it. So, yeah. Then, of course, we have reached the point with the game in which God has taken a break. He's gone on a vacation. As you can see, from the room being empty and there being no more missions. Monday at 10. I don't know. If something happens, don't forget. I like this. God has a post of steps up because, you know, he might forget things. Yeah, she's giving me the side eye. So I'm really upset you can't use this. Anyways, so yeah, but why is God here in any capacity? Now the thing is the thing is about the Watchers compared to the Hiss and the Mold is that they can't actually create the logos themselves. They are stealing it from God, and God is contained in all his creation. So technically, what we have here is them trying to hack God, them trying to become God, them trying to rewrite the void completely in their image, decided to being not as advanced and not as good as God's because they want to break away. They want to believe that they themselves are greater than any other thing that was created in reality. So what happens to that is they become incompatible to the Logos. The Logos begin to degrade into the Logos. They begin to decompose. Not decomposed. A friend of mine had a term for this. It was really good, called de-resolution. Basically, what happens is that the pattern that they exist in degrades. So therefore, whatever the Hiss was, whoever these brilliant people were that put their brains into a giant vibrational waveform in an attempt to transcend the concepts of mortality itself, probably in the same fashion that people want to upload their brains into a goddamn computer here in an attempt to create immortality, degraded. They literally just started becoming less and less because really the data is going to be limited by the nature of what contains it. If the containment of the world is poorer, then so does the intelligence and personality of the individuals that are going to be in that sort of thing. So yeah,
Some real action.
I hate to keep saying that. I never want cowboys in my team. They're looking for their own, scratching their own violence itch, and I'm looking for people who work professional. You're a professional, right? Well, you're quiet. That's a start. Yeah, in any case, yeah, this is the concept that the Hive originally was brilliant, and then unfortunately what happened is every consciousness within it degraded, and in an attempt to try to increase the processing potential of what is inside the Hive to preserve those intelligences in a failed manner, it continued to absorb more. And then basically all that was left, like with the Mold, because it was probably an earlier version, was this concept to try to preserve itself by consuming everything around it. Now, remember that we've seen the Former. The Former is one of the Watchers that degraded to the point where they were kicked off, and they're wandering around randomly trying to make magic items and make it their own alternate director to take this place over, when in reality all they're creating is killer fridges and flamingos that murder you when you touch them or look away from them for the fridge. So yeah, that basically shows degradation is happening on the Watcher scale too. The Hive and the mold construct are examples of this degradation happening 100%. All that's left is a mindless desire to consume. Now, any Akira fans out there, because you might remember a speech, kind of pivotal speech in the the anime, in which Kay, possessed by the spirits of 3 really powerful psychic babies, yeah, it's a weird film, goes into a speech about why giving cosmic power to humans is a bad idea, because like, if you gave an amoeba the power of a human being, in other words, the size, shape, intelligence, and physical power of a human being, they would just start eating dogs and rats. In other words, you've probably seen or heard of the film called The Blob. That would be what happens, because their instincts are to act like a amoeba. It doesn't matter how much processing power, how much energy, how much ability you give them. Their motivations are primal. They are locked into their biology, and they cannot exceed it no matter what you do with them. So it's why the term playing COD exists, because it's a bad idea. I was hoping I get on here. Oof. Let me get on here. So yeah, you end up with some sort of monstrous being, a eldritch abomination. In fact, this may be where some of the concept of eldritch abomination, in fact, comes from. Is that idea of primitive species, primitive attempts to transcend reality gone bad, because it doesn't matter if you store the brightest people's intelligence into some sort of vibrational construct. Eventually, they're going to degrade, because their purpose is to be an individual being. I mean, they're not supposed to be a hive form. They're not supposed to be any of these things, but by sticking them in such a powerful construct, eventually the construct, because function follows form, as well as form following function. That's an old thing of biology I'll have to explain someday. But it's sort of the intertwined concept of consciousness, form, and purpose within a biological construct. You're going to eventually cease to exist as what you once were and simply attempt to become an animalistic survival instinct. See, I'm not sure. Maybe I can get on over here. Yeah, there we go. Sometimes I just don't want to take the stairs. So, yeah, I can imagine when we get back to normal, Jesse just floating up the stairs to get out of foot traffic, and everybody else being like, goddamn director showing off again. So, yeah. So, these things eventually devolve into some sort of monstrous being that we have to unmake. And by someone like Jesse to do so, despite the fact that we are, in fact, probably next on the list. Because if you think about it, when humanity, let's say humanity survives the next 3,000 years, okay? They continue to evolve their technology to the point where they can literally merge it with themselves. Excuse me. Bypassing that particular, ignore the fire, I didn't mean to do it. Bypassing that particular combat, the thing is that as a result, imagine the human race. Let's say they take all the technology that the Bureau has found. Now, the examples are probably that a lot of the scientific techniques and artifacts that the Bureau plays with are actually surviving technology from previous ages, from more advanced civilizations, as it were. We're taking that and we're trying to figure out how to use it ourselves. Now, some of that is being directed by the Bureau, which of course, by the Board, the Watchers, which of course want to control everything, including any residue power, in their attempt to stave off the inevitable annihilation at the hands of, I like how she gives the side is there, the hands of God. So until that point, they will continue to monopolize as much as they can. I don't feel like I'm playing with them. And as a result, we're going to be in conflict. Now, humanity, let's say that the Board collapses finally. They all go away to the former. They all become stooges and devolve into monsters that eventually are slain by some individual or force, possibly the survivors of the Bureau, possibly some god-chosen agent, possibly they just dissolve and devour each other. Let's say it happens. But they're going to leave behind all this stuff. And that means that humanity is going to pick it all up. And humanity is going to be thinking about when, if, say, God decides to drop the event horizon and wipe us all out and start over this next draft, you know, it's going to collapse the universe. And then some really smart people are going to say, we don't want to die, because they probably won't even know why it's happening. They just know the universe is falling out. The stars are going out. We've got to find some way to survive. And so they do so. They create some sort of bathysphere. In fact, if really come down to it, Remedy did actually tackle this option in their previous game, Quantum Break, which I've heard it wasn't that good, so I haven't really decided to play it. One of the reasons why the difficulty curve of the combat caught me at the beginning of this series. But yeah, they're going to say, let's create some sort of sanctuary, some sort of state of being, some sort of evolution to ourselves that allows us to survive the end of the world. And they're going to hover out there in the void. Meanwhile, God, of course, deciding that he's learned what he was and going to make a more advanced civilization, begins the process, does the let's there be light part, the universe sweeps forward, and then as the vibrational structure of that universe expands, encounters a very small life pod of sorts, of degenerate future human beings desperate to survive, and only that if they consume more of this new world beyond us, they will begin to survive more and become more powerful. They'll be the next hiss. Humanity will be the next monster, the next abomination, the next problem that some hero of some future species is going to have to solve. There'll be the villains, there'll be the Cthulhu, there'll be the Azathoth, there'll be the things whispered about in books about how terrible beings that have great knowledge but a great danger, and only the foolhardy and the mad would attempt to bargain with them. And they will wonder, where did these beings come from? Why did they become this? And they'll make up stories. And I guarantee you, none of them, almost none of them, will be right. Anyways, this is Fantastic World saying farewell from Lovecraft Country, and I hope you enjoyed my little rant in imagination over the concept of the hiss, the void, and, well, the mold. I guess I'll be putting that in the title as well. And the fact how it all ties in together with a cosmic horror conception of the Gnostic / pre-Kabbalistic form. So if you enjoyed this, like, share, subscribe. It's kind of crazy, but I'm thinking that since I'm getting some positive feedback from this one, that if you guys want to see me do this in a more formal station, to put all these pieces together with some edited material and such, make it more coherent, because this is kind of a rough proof of concept, then let me know in the comments, because when the series is over, because I obviously can't do it before the series is over, I could be wrong in some of these assumptions and have to edit this stuff, and I cannot, obviously won't have all the footage I need until I finish doing this series. So, but if you are interested, sometimes with summer and spring, we'll be counting that as some of our bonus material. Now, bonus material will be generated by the channel subscriber count. Every 25 and 75, I add one bonus material. In fact, each one of these episodes counts towards the previous total. This is the 4th out of 5 I had in reserve, but we already passed by 1025, and we're approaching 1075, which is amazing for subscriber count. So that means we've backed down to 2 bonus ones, which means the series will obviously continue, and we have future episodes coming up. Now, some of those have also already been accounted for saved Secret World episodes. And yes, we'll get back to Secret World. I'm pretty sure that the Log4 Shell virus has stopped being an issue. At least I think I would have heard of it as still an issue. So I'm going to start bringing back into MMOs, including that one. In fact, I'll probably try to do something special for it when this series ends. But in any case, like I said, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you liked it, down below are links to the Gumroad, the payment platform. You can help expand this program. You can vote for additional episodes for the channel, because once we get 2 episodes a month, and we'll get 3 episodes additional a month when we hit the 3rd stretch goal for supporters. And of course, you get exclusive material. And in that case, I'll just face you in this one and say farewell. And I'll see you next time.